On the eve of his crucifixion, Jesus prays to his Father, I have given them your word, and the world hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not ask that you take them from the world, but you keep them from the evil one. Hey everyone, welcome back to Aliens on Earth, Season 2, Episode 24, in our series Discovering Jesus in the Old Testament. I'm your host, Nate Gazau, and if you're listening to us for the very first time, I just want to say welcome. I also want to encourage you to go back and listen to our previous episodes as we dive into discovering Jesus in the Old Testament. Last week, we dived deep into a radical transformation that was promised in Ezekiel. We discovered Christ as the embodied glory who purifies us from internal compartmentalization. We saw him as the great surgeon who replaces that stone heart to break that self-help loop that we often find ourselves in. We also saw him as the resurrection and the life who commands life to our valley of dry bones, shattering the reality filter of logic. Ezekiel gave us this promise of inner resurrection. And today we move into Daniel, who, while serving in the highest seats of the enemy power in Babylon and Persia, gives us the ultimate promise of the enduring kingdom. Daniel lived under the relentless pressure, yet his life and visions reveal that the King of Kings operates within and beyond all human empires. So I want you to grab your notes, get that coffee, and let's dive into our search for Christ in the book of Daniel. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump in, if you've been blessed by this podcast or find it impactful, I'd like you to hit the follow button. Be a partaker of spreading God's truth by sharing this with your friends, coworkers, family, or even strangers. Let's spread the truth of Christ together. Now, back to this episode. So, the first part of Daniel, we see this integrity and this uncompromised life. We see Daniel was a young, highly gifted exile and was selected for this Babylonian royal service. His very existence was an attempt by the empire to assimilate him or to erase his Hebrew identity, his religion, and his culture. His name was changed to Belteshazzar, and he was offered the king's richest unkosher foods. This test of food was honestly a test of loyalty and identity. And Daniel's quiet resistance, it wasn't a rebellion, but it was a steadfast commitment to the boundaries that were set by God. In Daniel chapter 1 verse 8, we see, but Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food, nor with the wine that he drank. Therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. The truth is, true allegiance to Christ often requires a quiet and firm non-participation in this dominant cultural system and the demand of compromise. Christ is the pattern of this perfect obedience. He is the ultimate example of the uncompromised life, refusing every temptation from the devil. We see that in Matthew chapter 4. His commitment to his Father's will was absolute, even to the point of death on the cross. Hebrews chapter 4 verse 15 assures us that he was tempted in every respect, yet without sin. The obedience of Daniel that was displayed under a foreign king, it foreshadows this perfect obedience of the eternal king who made his life a pure offering. So we've got to live recognizing that our allegiance is not to our current temporal system, whether it's political, corporate, or cultural, but to an eternal king. Living like Christ means holding firm to God's standards, even when it costs us status or comfort. So the challenge for us is the social conformity trap. We rarely face a literal defilement of food. Our test comes in digital spaces or corporate culture. It's the pressure to laugh at an explicitly inappropriate joke at the office, or this quiet omission of truth when filling an expense report, or public silence on a justice issue because our brand relies on political neutrality, or this sort of quiet assimilation. We choose the king's menu, social approval, over Christ's conviction, which is personal integrity. And I've heard this story of a young Japanese lawyer who was offered this big position at a firm. Part of that firm's required culture was this lavish sort of late night entertainment with prospective clients. So you'd take them out to these fancy bars or restaurants or whatever, and you'd get them to drink and warm up so that you can kind of push your agenda. And these questionable activities, that lawyer kind of knew that it would be hard to maintain faith in that environment, and he politely declines, losing that high-paying job opportunity. But in that moment of doubt, thinking he'd forfeit his career, that's where we learn, like, Daniel's life teaches us that God honors the boundary more than the brilliance, more than the edge, or more than what we could do for ourselves. God honors our boundaries. The encouragement is honestly this: you are defined by your convictions, not your compromises. The king who controls the destiny of the empires will ensure that your quiet integrity is your ultimate security. And that should push us. And I want us to think about that biggest area of social pressure that we may face this week, where integrity could be tested, whether at a lunch or an unethical shortcut at work or content you consume privately or whatever that may be. Stop the quiet assimilation. Pray, asking Christ to grant you that Daniel resolve, not the boldness to preach, but the quiet strength just to say no, or to simply walk away without explanation, knowing that your loyalty to the king is a testimony in and of itself. So that brings us to the second point. We see that in Daniel, this statue and kingdom that endures. King Nebuchadnezzar dreams of a giant statue made of all these different metals, representing the rise and fall of human empires. Babylon signifying this gold, Persia this silver, Greece this bronze, and Rome this iron. All human power structures are destined to crumble. Daniel reveals the meaning of this crushing climax in Daniel chapter 2:44. It says, "In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever." The truth of this is, human history is not a cycle of chaos. It's a fixed countdown toward the eternal reign of the king. Christ is the crushing rock and the eternal kingdom. He is the one who emerges, not from the systems of man, but from God's hand to shatter the entire statue. In Matthew chapter 21, verse 44, records Christ identifying himself with this very imagery, saying, "Whoever falls on this stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it falls, it will crush him." Christ fulfills this prophecy by establishing a spiritual kingdom that is immune to political collapse, economic ruin, or even military conquest. We've got to live recognizing the final authority of the kingdom of God over all human kingdoms. Living like Christ means decentering our hope from this sort of temporary safety offered by earthly politics, parties, or economic forecasting, and recentering it on the rock that stands forever. The modern day Christian struggles with this political anxiety and idolatry. We are constantly tempted to place our trust in this political party or national leader that we support. When our side wins, we feel safe, and when our side loses, we feel this utter despair, as if the entire kingdom of God is threatened. This despair is evidence that we have mistakenly treated the iron and the clay feet of this statue as an immovable rock. Our focus on winning the political moment blinds us to the triumph of the eternal movement. I was speaking with this group of Christians one time after the election, and it didn't really go their way, and the atmosphere was kind of tense. It was devastating. People were crying. They were, genuinely afraid for the future of the world. And I reminded them that Daniel, who served 4 successive, wildly different empires, from Babylonian tyranny to Persian bureaucracy, Daniel didn't survive because he voted correctly or was on the right side of history. He survived because he was loyal to the king who crushed all those empires from the outside. The encouragement to you and I is, our security is not in the ballot box or the stock market. It is in the kingdom cut without human hands. the rock is already victorious. And for us, we should identify that source of our biggest either political or national anxiety and stop the internal argument or that doom scrolling. Instead, engage in that sovereignty practice. Look at the source of anxiety and declare, this too is temporary. Then spend some time deliberately praying for that current ruler or system that causes you the most fear, recognizing that they only have power because the crushing rock allows it for a time. In Daniel chapter 2, verse 21, we see that. And as we move forward in this third part of this story, we see in Daniel, we see the fourth man in this testimony of deliverance. The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is honestly this ultimate test of trust in Daniel chapter 3. Facing this fiery furnace for refusing to worship the golden statue, they declare the beautiful truth. He says, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods. Their faith was rooted in God's character, not in his guaranteed intervention. And this is the gold standard of discipleship. This is it. This is the ultimate standard. When Nebuchadnezzar looked into the furnace, he saw 4 men walking, and the appearance of the fourth man was like the son of the gods. Christ is the fourth man in the fire. He is the pre-incarnate appearance of the Son of God, actively interceding and protecting his faithful people in the crisis. He doesn't always prevent the fire. He promises his presence through the fire. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 2 promises, when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. The furnace reveals that Christ's primary role is to be Emmanuel, God with us in our moments of greatest testing. And we've got to live with that faith that trusts God's presence more than his power to change our circumstances. Living like Christ means embracing the but if not type of faith, trusting his character even when he chooses not to remove the trial. And honestly, in our modern day Christianity, the pitfall is this conditional type of faith. We often believe that if I pray hard enough, my marriage will be saved. Or if I have enough faith, my illness will be cured. Or when the trial intensifies or the outcome is negative, we feel God has failed us. We ask, why did the fire get hotter? And honestly, this is a failure to recognize the value of Christ's presence over the convenience of a rescue. The purpose of the trial, it's often not to prove God's power, but to reveal how close he is, to reveal his closeness to us. I think of this other story of this single mom who fought a long, painful battle with health conditions, and she never miraculously got healed. The fire stayed hot, but she confessed that during her weakest moments in that hospital, she felt this profound sense of peace, or this intimacy with Christ that she'd never known before. She realized that the fire wasn't meant to disappear. It was meant to bring her closer to the fourth man. That encouragement is this: your hardest struggle is not the sign of God's distance. It's an invitation into his unique presence. You don't get to experience the fourth man unless you're willing to step into the fire. So that's the call. Identify the single greatest, most difficult trial that you're facing right now, the thing that you're desperate for God to remove. Stop praying only for the fire to go out. Instead, engage the fourth man in prayer. Engage Christ. Confess the but if not conviction that we saw in Daniel 3:17 and 18. And say this: King Jesus, I trust your power to deliver, but more than that, I demand your presence in this fire. Ask him to make his presence so real that the trial becomes the place where you encounter him most intimately. And I'll end it with this: the search for Christ that we saw in Daniel, it's a call to eternal loyalty. Because Christ is the pattern of this perfect obedience, we reject this social conformity trap, and we live with Daniel's resolve. Because Christ is the crushing rock, we reject all these political anxieties, and we fix our hope on the kingdom that will never be destroyed. Because Christ is the fourth man in the fire, we reject this conditional faith, and we demand his presence in our deepest trials. The King who cannot be deposed is with you right now. He is your integrity, your destiny, and your only security. So, with that, I want to say thank you for joining us on this episode. And next time, we'll continue our journey, but we move into the minor prophets with the book of Hosea as we discover Christ in the ultimate portrait of God's redemptive and enduring love. So, until then, you're listening to Aliens on Earth, and I'm your host, Nate Gazal. Peace.